Ava Merrick tasted blood before she realized she was screaming, except no sound left her throat. She was on the bathroom floor, palms pressed against cold tile, eyes fixed on the shattered phone glowing inches away. On the screen, the email she wasn't meant to see blinked like a verdict. Your wife is unstable. She needs monitoring. I'll handle her. Gavin Rhodes. Her husband had sent it. To her boss. At 2:14 a.m., Ava's breath fractured. He hadn't just sabotaged her career. He'd rewritten her sanity, framing her as fragile, volatile, unfit. And now she knew why her projects vanished, why her colleagues whispered, why HR tread around her like she was a lit fuse. Her voice broke months ago. But this was the moment something deeper snapped. Some truths didn't cut. They severed. And Ava realized, with bone-deep terror, there was no going back. The apartment was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that presses into the skin, the kind that feels like holding one's breath underwater. Ava Merrick stood barefoot on the cold tile of the kitchen floor, staring at the glow of her laptop screen. It was nearly midnight, and Seattle's rain whispered against the windows like a warning she couldn't quite decipher. On the screen was the email thread she wasn't supposed to see, a thread that explained everything. It was a message originally addressed to her biggest new client, a major beauty tech brand she had spent months courting. A message sent from her own account, typed in her own tone, signed with her name, except she hadn't written it. The email apologized for her lack of professionalism, claimed she was emotionally overwhelmed, and suggested she might not be the right fit for the project. It closed with a polite but humiliating request. We understand if you need to terminate the contract. Ava Merrick. Ava swallowed, tasting metal. She hadn't written those words. She would never write those words. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled to the bottom, where the client responded, disappointed but unsurprised. Because this wasn't the first time her communication had seemed erratic. Her sight blurred. Erratic. That was the word Gavin used whenever she disagreed with him. But this sabotage, this was something else entirely. She clicked the metadata tab like a reflex. She knew how. She'd worked in digital media long enough, and there it was, the IP address, one she recognized, the apartment's IP, the same one tied to Gavin's devices. Her breath cracked in her throat. A sound escaped her. Not really a sob, not really a gasp. Something in between, a sound that said both I knew it and God, no. She tried to speak, to whisper his name, to call out to the man asleep upstairs. But her mouth wouldn't move. Her voice refused her. It had been happening more often, these moments where she reached for words and found only silence. Years of being corrected, minimized, gently ridiculed, told she was too intense, too emotional, too sensitive. It had carved something out of her. And now, faced with proof of betrayal, her voice collapsed completely. She closed the laptop slowly, like performing the final gesture of a funeral rite. A floorboard creaked behind her. She flinched. Gavin stood in the doorway, hair tousled, wearing that soft navy t-shirt she once loved. He blinked as if annoyed that she wasn't in bed where she belonged. "Ava, what are you doing up?" She tried to answer. Not a sound came out. He sighed, stepping forward, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Jesus, you look pale. Did you have another moment? You know you can wake me when your anxiety gets like this." My anxiety. He always said it like that, like her fear was a misbehavior. She pressed a hand to her throat, desperate to force sound out. Gavin's brows knit together as he approached. "Hey." Slow breaths. He touched her shoulders, guiding her toward a chair with practiced ease. "You've been working yourself too hard.
Did you get another bad email or something?" The lie slid out of him so smoothly she almost believed he didn't know. Ava shook her head weakly. He cupped her face gently, as if comforting a child. "You scare yourself, sweetheart. You read too much into things. You always have." She wanted to scream, wanted to shove him away, wanted to shout, "I saw what you did." "I know." But her mouth was a locked door. Her silence, once an annoyance to him, now protected him. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning when you're thinking clearly." As he walked away, Ava stared at the dark window, her reflection barely visible. A woman with no voice. A woman whose truth lived only in the glow of a metadata tab. A woman standing at the edge of something breaking. And something inside her whispered, not with sound, but with certainty, "This is the moment you don't come back from." Morning came too bright for the kind of night Ava had lived through. Seattle's usual veil of clouds had thinned, letting in a sharp, almost intrusive light that spilled across the living room floor. It illuminated everything she used to find comforting. The walnut shelves, the framed travel photos, the soft gray sofa. But today, the apartment felt like a museum curated by someone else. Someone who had designed her life into stillness. Gavin was already in the kitchen, brewing coffee like any ordinary Wednesday. He looked composed, crisp, as if he hadn't just dismantled her trust piece by piece. His smile was warm in a way that felt rehearsed. "Morning." He slid a mug toward her. "You look better. I'm glad." Ava sat down slowly, the chair cold through her thin sweater. Her voice felt like a bruise waiting to be touched. She opened her mouth. Nothing. Again. The quiet was humiliating, as if her emotions had physically unplugged her vocal cords. Gavin didn't seem surprised. He never was. "You know," he said, stirring his coffee casually, "I've been thinking. Maybe all this pressure at work is getting to you more than you realize." She held the mug tightly, knuckles whitening. "You've always had a tendency to spiral," he continued. "And it's not your fault. You're sensitive. That's one of the things I love about you." He smiled like the words weren't a cage. Ava looked away, eyes tracking the faint scratch on the wooden table, the one she'd made 2 years ago while building a bookshelf. She remembered Gavin scolding her for not being careful. She remembered apologizing. She remembered apologizing every time. He leaned forward, lowering his voice into a gentle, authoritative murmur. "We need to get you stable again, sweetheart. Less stress. Maybe fewer late nights." Her heart thudded painfully. Fewer late nights? The only reason she worked late was because her projects mysteriously disappeared, became corrupted, or were accidentally misfiled by someone who insisted they were trying to help. She pressed her lips together, inhaling slowly through her nose, hoping the air would carry sound with it. But her throat tightened instead. The harder she tried, the smaller she felt. Gavin watched her silently, eyes narrowing just slightly. Even concern looked like evaluation on him. "Still nothing?" he asked gently. "It's all right. We'll work through it." We. He always put himself in her battles, inserted himself as savior, even when he was the storm. Ava stood abruptly, not dramatically, just enough to surprise herself. She walked toward the window, staring at the skyline. Glass towers gleamed. People hurried below with lattes and deadlines and voices. Voices! The word pulsed painfully. Behind her, Gavin's footsteps approached. "Ava," he said softly, "I know last night was rough for you." For her, as if he'd played no part. "But you've got to trust me more. When you jump to conclusions, when you let fear take over, you make yourself sick." A flicker of heat rose under her skin. She turned slightly, enough to catch his reflection in the glass. Confident, controlled, calm. His image almost overlapped with hers, except she looked like someone fading. She tried again to speak. "I saw the email. I know you sent it," but the words stuck in the dark hallway inside her chest. Gavin stepped behind her, hands resting on her arms, his touch firm but not quite comforting. "Let me take care of things for a while," he murmured. "You don't have to force yourself to handle everything. You're not built for that kind of stress." Not built for it. The phrase landed like a stone in her stomach. She swallowed, and for a moment, the force of her own heartbeat felt like it might break open the silence inside her. But it didn't. He kissed the top of her head. "We'll get you back on track. I promise." Ava closed her eyes, not out of affection, out
of exhaustion. When he finally let go, he headed to the bedroom to get ready for work. She waited 2 full minutes before turning away from the window, breathing shallow and shaky. Then she moved, quietly, quickly. She went to the kitchen counter, pulled her laptop close, and opened the lid. The email thread reappeared like a wound she hadn't tended to. Her pulse skittered. This time, she didn't look at the message. She went straight to the metadata, her proof, her reality. The IP address stared back at her. She took photos of the screen with trembling hands, then screenshots. Then she forwarded the thread to her personal drive, one Gavin didn't know about. For the first time in hours, she felt something warm spark in her chest. Not courage, not yet, but awareness. A quiet, steady truth. He could break her voice, but he couldn't erase her evidence. She heard Gavin's footsteps returning and closed the laptop just in time. He appeared in the doorway, adjusting his watch, looking immaculate. "I'll be home a little late, son," he said. "There's a partner meeting. Don't wait up." She managed a stiff nod. "Good." He kissed her cheek, lingering a moment too long. "And try to stay calm today. I don't want you spiraling while I'm gone." Spiraling, another word he owned, he left with a smile. Ava waited until the door clicked shut, then sagged into the chair, breath shaking out of her like wind escaping a fractured window. The house was silent, but for the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't entirely Gavin's. Some part of it belonged to her now. Small, shaking, terrified, but hers. The office smelled faintly of burnt espresso and new printer ink, an oddly comforting blend that Ava usually associated with deadlines and the steady hum of productivity. Today it felt like walking into bright light after too long underwater. She kept her steps small, controlled. Not timid, she told herself. Measured. Her throat was still sore from silence. Digital Valley Media, her workplace, buzzed with the usual morning energy. Screens flickered with campaign drafts. Co-workers exchanged quick greetings, their voices sharp and certain. Everything she wasn't. Ava slipped into her workstation, tucked between the design team and analytics. She set down her bag, opened her laptop, and waited for her pulse to steady. But someone was watching her. "Rough morning?" a voice asked. Ava flinched. Elias Carter stood a few feet away, holding a paper cup with both hands as if it were something fragile. He wasn't tall in an intimidating way, but in a quiet, reassuring way. Broad-shouldered, relaxed posture, dark curls, slightly messy, like he'd run his hands through them on the way in. He'd joined the team 3 months ago. He was the type who listened more than he spoke, the type coworkers trusted with sensitive tasks, the type who noticed details others missed. She forced a smile, thin, apologetic. He tilted his head gently. "You okay? You look like you didn't sleep." Ava opened her mouth to answer. Nothing came out, just air. Her cheeks heated. She lifted a hand to gesture "I'm fine," but even her hands felt uncertain. Most people would have looked uncomfortable, or worse, pitying. But Elias simply nodded, as if her silence made perfect sense, as if words were optional in his world. "Hey," he said softly, "no pressure. You don't need to talk if you can't."
Something loosened painfully inside her. He set his cup on her desk and lowered his voice. I was actually coming by to ask if you could look over the storyboard update from yesterday. No rush, only if you feel up to it. She nodded quickly, grateful for the shift back to work. Something normal, structured, safe. Elias offered a small smile that didn't demand anything. I'll send it over. When he walked away, Ava exhaled slowly, fingers trembling over the keyboard. His presence had felt like stepping into warm light after too many cold rooms. She opened her inbox. A message from Elias already waited. Subject: updated board. Only when you're ready. Those words, when you're ready, felt like a courtesy she hadn't received from anyone in years. She clicked the attachment. Then she froze. Several of her old files were missing. Again. Her heartbeat stumbled. This wasn't coincidence, not random corruption, not user error, not this many times. Her breath shortened. She clicked deeper into the folders. Some files gray, some renamed, some incomplete. Her stomach twisted. Gavin. He had access. She'd given it to him when they used to collaborate, when she thought a shared workspace was intimacy. Her hands clenched the edge of the desk. A shadow moved beside her. You're shaking. Elias's voice. Ava stiffened, hating that someone could see her panic so clearly. She lifted her hands as if to cover the screen, but he raised his palms gently. I'm not looking, he said. Just, you okay? She swallowed hard. Her tongue felt glued to the roof of her mouth. She shook her head, small, involuntary. He hesitated only a second before pulling the spare chair to her desk, sitting beside her at an angle that didn't crowd her. Do you want help? He asked. Her breath hitched. Do you want help? Not, what's wrong? Not what did you do? Just an offer, nothing more. She nodded once. Okay, he whispered. He watched her hands, not the screen, waiting until she opened the corrupted file. Can I? He asked, pointing to the keyboard. She nodded again. He typed quickly, navigating through metadata, logs, and timestamp trails. His brows knit slowly, confusion deepening. After a minute, he leaned back. These weren't corrupted, he said quietly. They were modified. She felt the floor tilt. He clicked a few more keys. They were edited from an external device, same IP each time. His voice softened. Ava, this wasn't an accident. Her
fingers curled in her lap. Her nails pressed half-moon shapes into her skin. Elias glanced at her, not invading, not demanding answers, just watching her reaction like one might watch a candle flicker in the wind. Has someone been messing with your work? He asked. Her lips parted. She tried. She really did. But her voice cracked, nothing forming. She shook her head, then immediately shook it again, reversing the lie. Tears stung her eyes. Elias held up a hand gently. You don't have to explain it right now, or ever if you don't want. But someone is doing this on purpose, and you shouldn't have to deal with that alone. The kindness was too much. She turned away slightly, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand before a tear could fall. He pretended not to notice. Tell you what, he said, soft but steady. I'll recover what I can. No reports, no office drama. Just getting you back what was yours. A small sound escaped her, almost a whisper, almost a thank you, but without form. Elias smiled faintly. See, you do have a voice. She startled. He leaned back, eyes warm but serious. You just haven't had a reason to use it in a while. Her throat tightened, painful, sharp, achingly hopeful, and for the first time that day, Ava felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Recognition. Someone finally saw her. Not the silence, not the shrinking, not the polished mask she wore for survival. Her. By late afternoon, the office had thinned out. Most employees had drifted to the cafe downstairs or logged out early to escape the Wednesday slump. The hum of printers quieted, conversation softened, and the open floor felt like a calmer, safer place. Ava remained at her desk, staring at the recovered files Elias had managed to salvage. Each restored document brought a tug of relief followed by a throb of dread, because every file he recovered was another confirmation of what she already feared. Someone was tampering with her work, and that someone had access to her home network. Her chest tightened. Across from her, Elias sat with his sleeves rolled up, concentration etched into the relaxed lines of his face. His laptop was open, running diagnostics on the remaining corrupted folders. He didn't crowd her or ask questions. He simply worked in a quiet orbit beside her, as if offering her a silent perimeter of safety. Ava wanted to thank him. She wanted to speak. She wanted to say, "I'm not imagining this. I'm not losing my mind. Someone is trying to break me." But her voice still lived somewhere deep, unreachable. Elias looked up. "Ava?" She tensed. He turned his screen toward her. A small window displayed detailed metadata, timestamps, device signatures, and most damning of all, a repeated login from a singular IP address. "I didn't want to jump to conclusions," he said softly, "but this is intentional." Her throat burned. He lowered his voice, cautious. "Does someone at home have access to your accounts?" The question landed like a punch she didn't defend against. Ava stiffened, her breath shaky. She didn't nod, didn't shake her head, but something in her eyes, something tired, bruised, worn thin, answered for her. Elias's expression shifted. Not pity, recognition, as if pieces of a puzzle had silently clicked. He leaned back in his chair, giving her space. "Look, whoever's doing this, they're trying to sabotage you professionally. This isn't small, and it's not random." Her fingers dug into her palms. Sabotage. The word felt too big, too sharp, too real. Maybe hearing it out loud would have destroyed her. But seeing it on his screen, the digital aftermath, it rooted itself in truth. She swallowed hard, gaze dropping to the floor. "I'm sorry," Elias murmured. "Sorry for what? For seeing her unravel? For witnessing a wound she never intended to show?" He continued, voice gentle but firm. "If you want, I can help you set up new security, separate networks, encrypted backups, at least until you figure out what you want to do." Figure out what she wanted to do. The words echoed painfully. For years, what she wanted had barely mattered. She had learned to shrink her desires into something manageable, something Gavin approved. He carved out her choices until she could no longer distinguish her wants from her fears. Her breath hitched. Elias shifted, not touching her, but grounding her with his presence alone. "Ava, you're not overreacting. Something is happening to you, and it isn't your fault." Her eyes stung. Fault. Another word Gavin loved. "You're misinterpreting. You're sensitive. You're imagining things. You always think the worst. You can't trust your own memories when you're stressed." The erosion had been slow. He didn't need to shout or strike. He only needed to make her question herself until silence became easier than explanation. A soft vibration buzzed from her phone. A text. From Gavin. "Gavin, heading home early, picked up dinner, don't stress today, love you." Her stomach dropped. Coming home early. He never came home early. A warning trembled through her. Elias noticed her reaction before he saw the name. His gaze flicked from her phone to her face, reading something fragile there. "You don't have to tell me," he said quietly. "But if going home doesn't feel safe..." Ava shook her head quickly, panicked, as if even acknowledging fear might summon Gavin into the room. Elias raised both hands gently.
Okay, you're all right. I won't push. He paused. But if you ever need a place to stay, even for an hour, or someone to walk you out, I'm around. She looked at him then, really looked. There was no agenda in his eyes, no curiosity, no judgment, just a quiet steadiness she hadn't felt in years. Her breath trembled as she typed a short message to herself in her notes app. Back up everything tonight. After he sleeps, carefully.
Quietly. She didn't realize Elias had glanced at her screen until he spoke. Good, he murmured. Plan for yourself first. Everything else can come later. She blinked back tears. He wasn't trying to save her. He wasn't telling her what to do. He was giving her permission to reclaim something she'd lost. Her autonomy, her judgment, her voice, quiet but still alive somewhere. The office lights dimmed automatically at the top of the hour. Elias packed up his laptop, but lingered. Do you want me to walk you out? Ava hesitated, then nodded. Outside, the dusk had settled heavy and blue over the city. Streetlights flickered, cars rushed past in silver streaks. She clutched her bag as they walked toward the parking structure. At the lobby doors, Elias stopped. You've got this, he said softly. And whatever happens, you're not as alone as you think. Her throat tightened painfully. She managed to whisper, barely audible, but real. Thank you. Elias's eyes softened with something almost like relief. There it is, he murmured. Her voice, small, trembling, but hers. Ava walked into the night with her heart shaking, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't just fear. It was possibility. The drive home felt like moving through fog, thick, shapeless, muffling everything inside Ava's chest. The city blurred past her windows, neon signs stretching into streaks of color. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, each turn executed with controlled precision, the way someone moves when they're trying not to shake. Gavin's text echoed through her mind. Heading home early, picked up dinner. Don't stress today. It was the kind of sweetness that coated poison, the kind designed not to comfort, but to corner. When she finally pulled into the garage of their building, her pulse was already high, like her body anticipated impact long before it arrived. The apartment door clicked open with a soft chime. Warm light spilled from the kitchen. Gavin stood at the counter, unpacking takeout bags with the ease of someone performing a rehearsed scene. He looked good, effortlessly put together in a collared shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms that Ava once found magnetic. He glanced up. His smile was immediate, too immediate. There you are. I was starting to worry. Worry. A word he weaponized often. Ava stepped inside, purse clutched like a shield. Her throat tightened immediately, voice slipping away before she even tried for it. She hated that his presence did that, turned her silence into instinct. Gavin approached, leaning down to kiss her temple. Long day? She flinched, barely, almost imperceptibly. But he noticed everything. His smile faded. Ava, talk to me. Talk. As if it were that simple. As if her voice hadn't been slowly dismantled by years of corrections, reprimands, subtle digs that felt like stitches sewn too tight. She stepped back slightly, needing space. Gavin's jaw tensed for a single second before smoothing out. Okay, he said lightly. Why don't you wash up? I got your favorite Thai basil chicken. Funny. It used to be her favorite. Before she stopped being allowed to choose favorites. She moved toward the bathroom, aware of the weight of his gaze following her. Inside, she locked the door. Her breaths came uneven. She pressed a palm against the counter, grounding herself. The mirror reflected a woman whose eyes were too wide, too tired. A woman who had spent too long shrinking to fit into someone else's comfort. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Elias. Elias, Did you make it home okay? Her breath shook. Just 5 hours earlier, Elias had been a coworker she barely spoke to. Now he was the only person she felt seen by. She typed 2 words, "I'm home." He replied almost instantly. "Good. Don't forget to back up your work tonight, even if it's just to your phone. One step at a time." A small, aching warmth flooded her chest. Someone was rooting for her without asking for anything in return. She pocketed her phone and stepped outside. Gavin was plating dinner. The scene was domestic, ordinary, almost cozy, but everything felt staged, like she was entering a set in a film she no longer believed in. "Come sit," he said gently. Ava sat. He watched her carefully, too carefully, like he was waiting for something. Confession, gratitude, dependence. Any sign she still fit into the version of her he required. "You were quiet all morning," he said. "Something happened?" Her pulse thudded. Her lips parted. Air moved. Sound did not. She hated that he brought her back to this place, this voicelessness, but she also knew why. Silence was safer. Silence was survival. Silence was the least risky move on a board where he held all the pieces. Gavin reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "Sweetheart, you know you can tell me anything." Anything, except the truth. A flicker of the email thread flashed behind her eyes. The fake apology he wrote. The sabotage. The evidence Elias found. She pulled her hand back. The movement was small, but it hit Gavin like a slap. His expression shifted. Barely. A tightening around the eyes. A too calm inhale. "Ava," he said slowly, "you're acting distant, and we both know how you get when you start imagining problems." Her spine stiffened. Imagining. There it was, the word he used whenever she inched too close to reality. Gavin leaned forward, voice dipping into that soft, reasonable tone that disguised barbed wire. "If you're overwhelmed, let me help, but don't create issues that aren't there." Her heartbeat hammered, not with fear this time, but with something bordering on clarity. He wasn't denying anything. He wasn't acknowledging anything. He was erasing, again. Ava reached for her glass of water. Her hand trembled. She hoped he didn't see. He did. He always did. "Ava," his tone sharpened. "Tell me what's wrong." She set the glass down, fingers curling into her lap. She forced air through her throat, praying sound would follow. It didn't. Frustration burned behind her eyes. Gavin exhaled, rubbing his temples. "This isn't healthy. You shutting down like this. You need to trust me. Let me take care of things before they spiral." Spiral. Another word he owned. Ava swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. She couldn't confront him. Not yet. Not without preparation. Not without plans. Not without a voice. She stood abruptly. "I didn't mean to upset you," Gavin said quickly. "Sit, please. Let's talk." She shook her head, backing away. He rose too, hands out like he was calming a frightened animal. Hey, stop. You're overreacting." Something in her chest shuddered, but this time it wasn't breaking. She steadied herself, lifted her chin, and mouthed the single word, "No." It wasn't sound, but it was the closest thing to defiance she'd shown him in years. Gavin froze. Shock flashed behind his calm facade. Ava walked to the bedroom, slow, deliberate. She closed the door quietly, not slamming it, not provoking, just creating space he couldn't cross. And for the first time, he didn't follow. She locked the door, exhaled a trembling breath, and pressed her back against it. Her voice wasn't back, but something else was. Resolve, small but alive. Tonight, she would back up everything. Tomorrow, she would figure out the rest. Night in Seattle had a way of pressing itself against the windows, quiet, heavy, full of unspoken things. Ava sat cross-legged on the bedroom floor, laptop open, phone beside her, backup drive plugged in. The soft hum of the machine filled the room like distant static, the only sound allowed to breathe. Through the closed door, she could hear faint clinks of dishes in the kitchen as Gavin cleaned up. Too normal. Too calm. The quiet before the storm he pretended didn't exist. Ava's fingers hovered above the keyboard. She had backed up almost everything from work. Screenshots, email threads, metadata, versions of files that had been altered. Even her own voice memos, moments she recorded when she felt clarity long enough to articulate it. Her heart picked up speed. She selected the last folder. Evidence. Final. Pressing the upload button felt like stepping into the unknown. As the progress bar inched forward, memories flickered. Not loud ones, not the dramatic scenes most people pictured when they heard the word control, but the small things, the subtle ones, the ones no one would believe unless they'd lived it. Gavin correcting her stories when she spoke in front of friends. Him reminding her she remembered things wrong. Him gently suggesting she shouldn't wear certain clothes because they sent the wrong message. The way he always said, "You know how you get." Little cuts. Daily. Invisible. Her silence wasn't born in a moment. It had been built. Her upload finished. Ava exhaled shakily. Not relief, not victory, but space. For the first time in years, she had proof. Not for others. She wasn't even sure she'd show anyone, but for herself. Her phone buzzed softly beside her. A message from Elias. "Elias, you don't have to answer, but I hope you're okay." Her eyes softened. She typed slowly. Ava, backing up everything now. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Elias. "Good. Proud of you." Her breath hitched. She wasn't used to anyone being proud of her, without condition or expectation. She closed her eyes, letting the simple warmth of the words settle. Footsteps echoed outside the bedroom. Her whole body tightened, not visibly, but deep, like a wire pulled taut. The doorknob turned. "Ava?" Gavin's voice was soft. Too soft. "Can we talk?" She froze. He jiggled the knob gently. "Sweetheart, you locked the door. Is everything okay?" Her heartbeat drummed in her ears, her lips parted, breath trembling. She wanted to speak, to say, "Not now," or "Please don't," or even just stop. But her voice retreated, disappearing into the old familiar darkness. She swallowed hard. Gavin sighed outside the door. "I'm not angry. I just want to understand what's going on. You're worrying me." Worrying me. A guilt blade disguised as tenderness. Ava stayed still. After a long pause, Gavin spoke again. Softer. Almost hurting. "I love you, Ava. Whatever this is, we can work through it. But locking me out like this doesn't feel like you." Her chest tightened painfully. No, she thought. It didn't used to feel like her. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe the version of her he wanted was the one who never locked a door, never questioned anything, never had boundaries. A long silence followed, then footsteps receded down the hall. Ava let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She checked the clock. 11:26 p.m. She waited 10 more minutes, listening for any sign of Gavin returning. Nothing. Finally, she stood, legs unsteady beneath her. She shut the laptop, tucked it into her bag, and quietly changed into a loose sweater. Her body felt wired but determined, like she was moving on instinct. Before going to bed, she needed proof of something else. Proof she could still use her voice at all. She walked to the bathroom, closing the door behind her. She turned on the sink lightly, just enough noise to hide her attempt. She faced the mirror, breath shaking.
Try, she whispered to her reflection. Except nothing came out. Pain welled behind her ribs. She forced air again, throat tightening. Please, she mouthed silently. Still nothing. She felt her eyes sting. Her palms pressed against the counter. Maybe she wasn't ready. Maybe her voice wasn't gone. It was just buried under years of trying to keep the peace. Her phone vibrated. Another message from Elias. Elias, one more thing before I sleep. Your voice isn't broken. It's just
waiting for safety. Her breath shuddered. She touched her throat gently. Maybe he was right. Maybe silence wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the body's way of protecting itself. She inhaled deeply, chest rising. Then she tried one more time, not forcing, not pushing, just allowing. A tiny sound escaped, barely audible, fragile, a breath shaped like a word. Okay. Her knees softened. It wasn't much. It wasn't even loud. But it was hers. For the first time in months, tears fell not from fear, but from release. She wiped her face, steadied her breath, and looked at herself with new eyes. She wasn't healed, but she wasn't gone. That mattered. As she slipped into bed and turned off the lights, a new understanding settled in her bones. Gavin hadn't broken her completely. He'd silenced her, but silence could end. And tomorrow she would begin learning how to speak again. Not for him, not for anyone else, for herself. Morning arrived with a pale gray sky, the kind that made the city look half awake, half dreaming. Ava stood at the bus stop instead of driving. She couldn't explain why. Maybe because the enclosed silence of her car felt too close to the night before. Or maybe because she needed to be around strangers, around voices that weren't demanding or dissecting her. The bus hissed to a stop, and she climbed aboard, fingers gripping the metal pole as she breathed in the warm mix of coffee, perfume, and worn leather seats. She blended into the crowd, anonymous, invisible, safe. At work, she arrived earlier than usual. The office lights were still dim, the open floor humming quietly with machines warming up. She slipped into her seat and opened her laptop with steady, deliberate movement. Today felt different, not stronger, but steadier, like the ground beneath her was still fragile, but no longer cracking. Around 9 a.m., Elias appeared, carrying a mug of tea instead of his usual coffee. He set it on her desk without a word. Chamomile, her favorite. Ava looked up, meeting his eyes. She managed a small, soft sound. Thank you. Elias blinked. Relief flickered through his expression, gentle and disarming. There it is again, he murmured. Told you it wasn't gone. She exhaled shakily. Only 2 words, but they felt monumental. He pulled up a chair. I've been thinking, he said quietly. There's something you should see. She stiffened. Elias noticed and lowered his voice. Nothing scary, but important. He turned his laptop around. On the screen was a log of attempted remote edits from the night before. A fresh one. Time-stamped at 10:54 p.m. Ava's breath stopped. That was right after she locked the bedroom door. Right after Gavin tried to come in. Right after she refused to let him. He'd tried again. Less than an hour later. Her pulse raced. Elias kept speaking softly, careful not to overwhelm. I blocked the intrusion, but he knows your old passwords. He knows the system. You need to cut access completely. Her fingers tightened around the tea mug. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't imagination. This was Gavin tracking her, reaching through their home network into her work life, even after she'd locked him out of the room. Elias hesitated, then added, I didn't tell anyone. I won't. This stays between us. But you should know. This isn't just sabotage anymore. It's control. The word made her stomach twist. Control. Yes, that was the shape of everything she had been living. Ava took a shaky breath. I I need... Her voice cracked, but it existed, so she tried again. I need options. Elias nodded. We'll make options. Not, I'll fix it. Not, let me handle it. We. For the next hour, they worked quietly, changing passwords, unlinking accounts, rerouting backups to new devices. Each step felt like untying knots she never realized she'd been bound with. By lunchtime, Ava felt lighter, still terrified but less trapped. But around 2 p.m., everything shifted. A ping echoed through the office. A company-wide alert. Urgent. Security breach reported. A wave of murmurs swept across the room. Elias's eyes snapped to Ava, then back to his screen. He clicked rapidly, his jaw tensed. Ava. He turned the screen. Look. Her heartbeat plummeted. Someone, using Gavin's exact credentials, had tried to access the agency's private cloud. Not her files this time. The company's confidential client folder. Ava felt cold sink into her bones. If that intrusion succeeded, it wouldn't just be sabotage. It would be a criminal offense, one tied directly to her access path. She whispered, barely audible, "He's trying to ruin me." Elias swallowed hard. Or he's trying to make sure you can't leave. Her lungs tightened. A supervisor rushed over. "Elias, it wants you, now." He nodded and rose, but before following, he leaned close to Ava and whispered, "Don't leave the office. Stay where people are. I'll fix this." Then he disappeared into the conference room, the glass walls reflecting worry like fractured mirrors. Ava sat frozen. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her throat ached. He was escalating. Fast. Desperate. Why? Her mind flashed back to all the hints she had ignored, the controlling questions, the sudden sweetness, the guilt-laced concern, the insistence that she was spiraling, the subtle panic in his eyes when she pulled away. Gavin wasn't afraid of losing her love. He was afraid of losing his control. And now, she'd broken the pattern. The afternoon stretched thin. After nearly an hour, Elias returned, quiet, composed, eyes holding something like adrenaline underwater. "We blocked it," he said. "The team thinks it was an external threat. No one suspects you." Relief washed through her, but it was thin, shaky relief, because she understood something clearly now. If she stayed silent, Gavin would destroy her career. If she confronted him, he would twist it all back onto her. If she left without preparation, he would retaliate. She needed a plan. She needed support. She needed her voice. Ava inhaled slowly. Her throat trembled as she forced out the words, soft, cracked, but real. "I need help." Elias's expression broke. In worry, in empathy, in fierce, quiet loyalty. "You have it," he said. "Whatever you need." Ava felt a strange sensation rise within her. Fear and clarity and something close to courage. Maybe this was karma, not cosmic, not mystical. Karma as truth revealed. Karma as consequences catching up. Karma as the moment a woman stops whispering and starts speaking. She wasn't there yet, but she was close. Tomorrow, she would do something she hadn't done in years. She would tell the truth. The morning Ava chose to leave was unremarkable on the surface. Soft rain on the windows, a muted gray sky, the gentle hum of Seattle waking up. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just a stillness she hadn't felt in years. And maybe that was why she knew it was the right day. She sat at the edge of the couch in the living room, her travel bag neatly zipped beside her. Inside were only the essentials: clothes, laptop, evidence drive, toothbrush. She hadn't packed sentiment. Sentiment had a way of pulling people back. Ava watched the clock tick toward 8 a.m. Gavin would be leaving for work soon. Every breath felt like an act of reclamation. He stepped out of the bedroom, buttoning his shirt cuffs, glancing at her with confusion painted across his features. Soft, careful confusion. The kind he used when he wasn't sure yet which version of himself to become. "Ava, you're up early." His eyes moved to the bag. "Going somewhere?" She swallowed, feeling her throat tighten but not close. Not today. She opened her mouth. Her voice came fragile, quiet, but present. "I'm leaving." Gavin froze. A crack appeared in his expression, quick, sharp, then immediately smoothed over. "Leaving for what? A meeting? A project off-site?" She shook her head slowly. He stepped closer. His smile was calm, but too stretched. "Honey, we can talk about whatever's upsetting you. You don't have to run off." Ava inhaled a trembling breath. "I'm not running." "Then what is this?" His voice remained soft, but the edges hardened. "Where is this coming from? Yesterday you were—" Her voice wavered, but she steadied it. "Yesterday, you tried to access my company's files again." The calm shattered. Gavin blinked once, twice. A tiny flicker of panic crossed his face, gone in an instant. "Ava, that's ridiculous. Why would I Don't." Her voice cracked but didn't disappear. He stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. She continued, slow, shaky, but firm. "I know what you did. The emails, the sabotage, trying to make me dependent." She exhaled sharply. "I have the logs." Metadata. Timestamps. For the first time in a long time, Gavin had no immediate words. His mouth opened, closed. His posture shifted, charm faltering, authority dissolving, calculation taking its place. She could see him rifling through his mental playbook, looking for the script, the tone, the manipulation that would pull her back. "Ava," he finally said, "you're stressed, misinterpreting things. Someone at work is clearly feeding you." "I'm not misinterpreting." Her voice surprisingly clear. He stepped toward her, not aggressively, but with the confidence of someone who still believed he held the center of the room. "Sweetheart, listen. If you leave now, you'll regret it. You're making a decision based on fear, not reality." She stood, her legs steady for once. "No," she whispered, "I'm making it based on reality, for the first time." Silence stretched, tense and heavy. Gavin's jaw clenched, the mask slipping. "You can't just walk away from a marriage because you're having a bad week. You need support. You need stability. I need... Her voice broke, but she pushed through. "Myself." He stared at her as if she had betrayed some sacred agreement. She picked up her bag. "Ava," he said sharply, almost panicked, "sit down. We're not done." Her hand trembled on the strap, but her voice didn't disappear this time. "Yes," she whispered, "we are." For a long moment, he didn't move. He looked like someone watching their grip slip from something they believed they owned. But she wasn't his to own. She walked to the door. Just before she opened it, he spoke, quieter than she'd ever heard him. "I took care of you. I protected you. Everything I did was for us." She paused, then said the simplest, truest thing she had. "You silenced me." And she left. The cold hallway air felt like a baptism. Each step toward the elevator felt like a lifetime gained. When the door slid open, Elias stood inside, holding a paper bag of breakfast. He startled at the sight of her. Puffy eyes, disheveled sweater, bag on her shoulder. "Ava?" His voice was soft, bracing. "Are you okay?" She exhaled, the release shaking her shoulders. "I left." Understanding flashed across his face. Not triumph,
Not surprise, but concern. He stepped aside, making room for her inside the elevator. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked gently. She nodded. "A hotel, for now." He nodded back, relieved. "Good. You don't have to explain anything." He handed her the bag. "Here, it's just oatmeal and fruit. You probably haven't eaten." She blinked at the kindness, simple, non-intrusive, human. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't say, "I'm proud of you," even though she knew he was. He didn't say, "You're safe now," even though she felt safer already. He just stood beside her in quiet solidarity, the only kind she could bear. When the elevator doors opened, the world didn't look lighter, but she did. The hotel room she checked into was small, warm, and quiet. She set her bag down, pulled out her laptop, and typed her statement for HR and legal at work. Calm, factual, detailed. Elias had reminded her, truth speaks clearly when you let it. When she hit send, Ava closed her eyes, feeling the weight shift off her chest, slowly, like sediment sinking to the bottom of clear water. Karma didn't come as fire. It came as clarity, as consequence, as a woman reclaiming a life she thought she'd lost. Ava sat on the bed, exhaled deeply, and whispered her first full sentence in months. "I'm free." It sounded small, but in the quiet, it echoed.